"Grandpa, they're planning to take your company tonight," whispered my 12-year-old granddaughter Octavia during what was supposed to be a joyful family reunion dinner. Her words struck like lightning through my chest, shattering 45 years of building Ashford Maritime Logistics. I, a trusting grandfather who had mentored my son through business school and given him executive positions, sat frozen as betrayal crystallized around me. But what I did next, a calculated counterstrike that destroyed their scheme in front of the entire board, shocked everyone who thought age had made me weak. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The voicemail from my son Percival arrived at 6:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning, which was unusual enough to make me set down my Charleston newspaper and bourbon-infused coffee. "Father, it's Percy. Listen, Delphine and I need to discuss something critically important about the company's future. Could you come to dinner tonight, 7 o'clock? It's urgent. Really urgent. We've prepared something special." I replayed the message 3 times, studying the tremor beneath his corporate smooth voice. In 45 years of running Ashford Maritime Logistics, I'd learned to detect deception in shipping contracts, union negotiations, and apparently in my own son's carefully rehearsed words. "Prepared something special." The phrase echoed through my Charleston waterfront penthouse as I stood watching container ships navigate the harbor. Those same words Winifred had whispered 3 years ago before cancer took her. "Watch Percy carefully. He's brilliant, but hollow." Delphine fills that hollowness with ambition, not love. At the time, I dismissed her warnings as morphine-induced paranoia. Now, standing in the kitchen where Winifred used to prepare her legendary she-crab soup, I wondered if my late wife had seen something I'd deliberately ignored. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Delphine. "Cornelius, please don't be late tonight. We've invited some very important people who specifically requested to meet you. This could change everything for Ashford Maritime. Dress nicely." Important people. Change everything. My businessman's instincts screamed warnings, but grandfatherly hope whispered that perhaps Percy had finally developed the initiative I'd been cultivating since business school. I'd funded his MBA at Wharton, given him a VP position at Ashford Maritime despite his mediocre performance as an $80,000 annual salary he'd never earned through merit, co-signed the mortgage on their Kiowa Island estate, $850,000 backing a property they couldn't afford alone, paid for Octavia's elite private academy $45,000 yearly, because my granddaughter deserved excellence even if her parents couldn't provide it, $3.2 million over 12 years, every dollar justified by family loyalty and hope that Percy would eventually embody the Ashford legacy. The photograph on my mantelpiece showed 4 generations of Ashford men standing before our first warehouse in night. My father's calloused hands gripping my shoulders, pride evident despite his stern expression. That pride had driven me to build what would become the largest maritime logistics operation on the eastern seaboard. Percy had never looked at me with that kind of pride, only expectation. I dressed carefully for dinner, choosing the navy suit Winifred had bought me for our 40th anniversary. The boutonniere she'd selected, white gardenias, sat preserved in a crystal box beside her ashes. Tonight felt significant enough to honor her memory properly. Driving toward their Kiowa Island estate, I passed the original Ashford Maritime Warehouse, now converted into a maritime museum. The building represented everything I'd built from nothing. 1,200 employees, 47 cargo vessels, contracts with every major shipping line operating in the Atlantic. All of it built on my name, my reputation, my decades of 16-hour days and calculated risks. Percy's driveway contained 6 unfamiliar vehicles when I arrived at 6:55 p.m. Expensive cars, a Bentley, 2 Mercedes, a Porsche Cayenne, not the casual family dinner I'd expected. Delphine opened the door before I could knock, her smile too bright, movements too choreographed. "Cornelius, you look absolutely distinguished tonight." She air-kissed both my cheeks, affectation she'd adopted after their European vacation last summer. Everyone is so excited to meet you. I stepped into their marble foyer, noticing the formal place settings visible through the dining room entrance. Crystal wine glasses, polished silver, white linens that caught the chandelier light. This wasn't a family dinner, this was a performance. Percy's in the study with our guests, Delphine continued, her hand on my elbow guiding me forward. He's been so nervous about tonight. This means everything to him. The study door stood partially open, and voices drifted into the hallway, confident, professional voices, discussing quarterly projections and market positioning. Grandfather. Octavia appeared suddenly from the kitchen, her 12-year-old face carrying an expression far too serious for a child. Can I show you something upstairs? It's really important. Sweetheart, Grandpa just arrived, Delphine interrupted smoothly. You can show him your school project after dinner. But Octavia's eyes met mine with desperate intensity, and I recognized that look. Winifred had worn the same expression when she'd tried warning me about Percy's character 3 years ago. Actually, I'd love to see what Octavia's been working on, I said firmly. Business discussions can wait 5 minutes. Delphine's smile tightened, but she waved us away. Fine, but don't be long. Our guests are waiting. Octavia grabbed my hand and practically dragged me up the spiral staircase toward her bedroom. Only when the door clicked shut behind us did she release the tears she'd been holding. Grandpa, they're going to steal Ashford Maritime tonight. The words landed like depth charges in my chest. What? I heard them planning it. Her voice shook but remained steady. 3 nights ago, I was supposed to be asleep, but I got up for water. Mom and Dad were in the study with those same people downstairs. They were talking about stock transfers and board votes and making you sign papers. I knelt slowly, my 71-year-old knees protesting, bringing myself to her eye level. Tell me exactly what you heard. Mom said you're too old to run the company anymore, that you've been making mistakes because you can't keep up with modern logistics. Octavia wiped her nose. Dad kept saying he felt bad about it, but Mom told him feelings don't matter. She said once you sign the documents tonight, they'll control 51% of Ashford Maritime, and you won't be able to stop them. My hands clenched involuntarily. I built Ashford Maritime as a privately held corporation with careful stock distribution. Percy held 15% as VP of Operations. I maintained 70% controlling interest. The remaining 15% belonged to Thaddeus Blackwell, my CFO of 20 years. Unless, did they mention Thaddeus? I asked quietly. Octavia nodded miserably. The fat man with the British accent, he was there. Mom called him a key ally and said his 15% plus Dad's 15% plus the new shares you'd sign over tonight would give them control. Thaddeus, my trusted CFO, was part of this betrayal. The man who'd stood beside Winifred's hospital bed, who'd cried at her funeral, who'd sworn loyalty to Ashford Maritime until his dying breath. What else did they say? Something about assisted living. Octavia's voice dropped to a whisper. Mom said once you sign the papers and move into that nice facility, they can finally fix all your old-fashioned mistakes. She said Ashford Maritime would be worth double without you holding it back. The room spun slightly. They weren't just stealing my company. They were planning to institutionalize me, erase me from the business I'd spent 45 years building. Did they say which assisted living facility? Magnolia Shores. Mom said it's really expensive, but worth it to keep you comfortable and out of the way. Magnolia Shores. I toured that facility 2 years ago when considering options for Winifred's final months. $15,000 monthly for their premium accommodations. Percy and Delphine had researched exactly how to dispose of me in luxury. Octavia, sweetheart. I pulled her into a fierce hug. You did exactly the right thing telling me, but now I need you to be very brave. Can you act normal during dinner? Pretend you never told me any of this? Are you going to stop them? Yes, but they can't know you warned me. This is our secret, okay? She nodded against my shoulder. Grandpa, I don't want them to take your company. You built it. It's yours. And it's going to stay that way. I held her at arm's length, making sure she could see the certainty in my eyes. I promise you, everything will be fine. Back downstairs, I found Percy entertaining 6 guests in the living room. 3 men in expensive suits, 2 women with corporate polish, and Thaddeus Blackwell holding court by the fireplace. Father! Percy's enthusiasm rang false. Come meet everyone. This is Marcus Pemberton from Coastal Capital Group, Victoria Chen from Meridian Investments, and investment bankers. I interrupted softly, shaking hands with mechanical politeness while my mind categorized threats. How interesting for a family dinner. We've been discussing exciting opportunities for Ashford Maritime's future, Marcus Pemberton said smoothly. Your son has impressive vision for modernization. Percy's always been full of vision. I accepted the bourbon Delphine pressed into my hand. Execution has been his challenge. If this story reminded you of the injustices you've seen, follow the channel and turn on notifications, because wherever justice is delayed, a new revenge story begins. An uncomfortable silence followed my observation. Victoria Chen recovered first. Miss Ashford, we've prepared a comprehensive presentation about taking Ashford Maritime public. The valuation projections are extraordinary. Taking it public, diluting my control into shareholder committees and quarterly earnings pressure, everything I deliberately avoided for 40. How thoughtful, I murmured, though I don't recall authorizing any such discussions. Well, that's what tonight's about. Delphine's voice carried forced cheerfulness, getting everyone on the same page about the company's future direction. The company's future direction. Without my consent or knowledge, dinner proceeded with theatrical precision. Delphine had hired caterers who served low-country cuisine with Manhattan sophistication. The investment bankers made casual conversation about maritime logistics trends while steering toward topics that highlighted my age and supposed obsolescence. The industry is moving toward full digitalization, Victoria Chen mentioned over she-crab soup, blockchain tracking, AI-optimized routing. Companies that don't adapt quickly will be left behind. We've been discussing these exact technologies, Percy interjected smoothly. Father's been resistant to change, but the market doesn't wait for tradition. I sipped my bourbon, letting them build their narrative. Cornelius Ashford, aging patriarch, stuck in old ways, holding back a company that could thrive under younger, more innovative leadership. Thaddeus caught my eye across the table and quickly looked away. Guilt or calculation. After 20 years of friendship, I couldn't tell anymore. Dessert arrived, pecan pie with bourbon ice cream, Winifred's recipe that Delphine had somehow obtained. The symbolism wasn't subtle. They were serving my dead wife's signature dish while planning to steal everything we'd built together. Cornelius, Marcus Pemberton began as coffee was poured. We've prepared some documents for your review. Nothing binding tonight, just preliminary agreements about transitioning Ashford Maritime into a more modern corporate structure. Documents. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. How convenient that you've brought legal paperwork to a family dinner. Percy shifted uncomfortably. Dad, we just want you to look at the possibilities. No pressure. No pressure, I repeated, noting how Delphine's hand tightened around her wine glass. Yet you've assembled investment bankers, prepared legal documents, and orchestrated this entire evening without my knowledge or consent. Victoria Chen leaned forward with practiced sympathy. Mr. Ashford, we understand change can be difficult, but your son has been working tirelessly to position Ashford Maritime for exponential growth. Surely you want what's best for the company's future. What's best for the company, I said slowly, or what's most profitable for Coastal Capital Group's investment portfolio. Silence crashed over the dinner table like a rogue wave. Thaddeus finally spoke, his British accent carrying false reassurance. Cornelius, old friend, you're reading this all wrong. We're here to help secure your legacy. Percy's vision, combined with your foundational work, could generate substantial management fees for everyone at this table except me. I stood, feeling every eye track my movement. Tell me, Thaddeus, when did you decide to betray 20 years of friendship? Before or after they promised you a larger equity stake? Thaddeus's face flushed crimson. This isn't betrayal. This is progress. You're 71 years old, Cornelius. How much longer can you realistically maintain this pace? Long enough to recognize a hostile takeover disguised as family concern. Percy pushed back his chair, desperation creeping into his voice. Dad, please just look at the documents. We've structured everything to ensure you're financially secure, comfortable. The Magnolia Shores facility. Yes, the assisted living facility. I smiled coldly. Where I'd be comfortable and conveniently removed from company operations while you liquidate everything I built. Delphine's mask finally cracked. This is ridiculous. We're trying to help you retire gracefully before you run Ashford Maritime into the ground with your outdated methods. Outdated methods that generated $42 million in profit last year. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Interesting timing for this dinner, by the way. Monday morning, the board was scheduled to vote on expanding our Pacific routes, a decision that would require unanimous shareholder approval. Percy's face went pale. How did you know about your plan to force that vote with stolen control? Because unlike you, I actually understand the business I built. I pressed a number on speed dial. Sophronia? Yes, it's Cornelius. I'm invoking emergency protocol. I need you at the Ashford Maritime boardroom in 1 hour. Sophronia Vale, my corporate attorney of 15 years, didn't ask questions. I'll bring everything. 1 hour. I ended the call and looked at each person around the table. Here's what's going to happen. We're all going to the Ashford Maritime headquarters right now, and we're going to have a proper board meeting about the company's future with legal counsel present and everything documented. That's insane. Delphine protested. It's 8:30 on a Saturday night. Perfect timing for corporate theft, I countered. But if you're all so confident in your plans for Ashford Maritime's future, surely you won't object to conducting this business properly. Unless, of course, you'd prefer I contact the Securities and Exchange Commission about potential fraud. Marcus Pemberton stood abruptly. Miss Ashford, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Your investment bankers who came to dinner with pre-prepared documents to strip me of my company. That's called a conspiracy. I pulled out my car keys. My granddaughter Octavia will remain here. The adults have business to discuss. Octavia watched from the staircase landing, her 12-year-old face showing fierce pride mixed with fear. I winked at her subtly, then walked toward the door. Dad, wait. Percy's voice cracked. You don't understand what we're trying to accomplish. I understand perfectly. You're trying to steal Ashford Maritime because you've never had the patience to earn it. I paused at the threshold. Ashford Maritime headquarters, 1 hour. Anyone who doesn't show up can explain their absence to federal investigators. The drive from Kiowa Island to the Charleston waterfront gave me exactly 43 minutes to make 3 crucial phone calls. First, Thaddeus Jr., this is Cornelius Ashford. I need you at headquarters immediately. Yes, I know it's Saturday night. Your father's involved in something that could destroy both his career and mine. If you want to salvage anything, get there now. Thaddeus Blackwell Jr., age 28, worked as our operations analyst. Unlike his father, the young man had integrity baked into his DNA. He'd idolized Winifred and mourned her death authentically. Second, Phineas, it's Cornelius. Remember that conversation we had about succession planning? I need emergency board authorization for alternative leadership structures. Can you activate our contingency protocols? Phineas Aldridge, my oldest friend and Ashford Maritime's senior operations director, responded immediately. Emergency protocols activated. I'll have everything ready in 30 minutes. Third, Meredith, I need a forensic accounting team at headquarters within 2 hours. Full audit of all transactions involving Percy Ashford and Thaddeus Blackwell over the past 18 months. Everything. Meredith Castellano, our chief legal officer, sucked in a sharp breath. That's serious. Attempted coup. Possibly fraud. Definitely betrayal. I'll have the team there in 90 minutes. The Ashford Maritime Headquarters building stood illuminated against Charleston Harbor, a monument to 45 years of shipping contracts and strategic growth. I designed it myself after the company's 20th anniversary. 6 stories of glass and steel overlooking the water where my father had first taught me to read tide tables. Tonight it would serve as a courthouse. Sophronia Vale arrived first, her BMW pulling up seconds after my Mercedes. At 62, she carried herself with the authority of someone who'd never lost a corporate battle. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her leather briefcase looked heavy enough to contain weapons. Cornelius, she clasped my hand firmly. Tell me everything. We settled into my top-floor office, the same space where I'd signed my first $1 million contract in 1983, and I outlined the conspiracy with business-like precision. Percy's 15%, Thaddeus 15%, the forged documents that would have given them 51% control, the investment banker conspiracy, the planned assisted living exile. Sophronia's expression grew progressively darker as I spoke. They were planning to execute this tonight? At a dinner party, they assumed I'd be too trusting or too senile to recognize what was happening. I opened my office safe, pulling out documents I'd prepared over the years. But I've been planning for Percy's potential betrayal since Winifred warned me 3 years ago. Contingency plan, complete corporate restructuring protocols, alternative succession paths, poison pill provisions that trigger if anyone attempts unauthorized control transfers. I spread the documents across my mahogany desk. Everything we need to ensure Ashford Maritime survives family treachery. Car headlights swept through the window, multiple vehicles arriving simultaneously. I watched from my 6th-floor vantage as Percy's Porsche pulled up alongside Thaddeus's Mercedes. The investment bankers arrived in separate vehicles, clearly coordinating their arrival. They're bringing the whole conspiracy, Sophronia observed. Bold or stupid, desperate, and desperate people make fatal mistakes. What would you do at this point? Write it in the comments. Your thoughts are as important as the story itself. Phineas arrived next, carrying 3 boxes of corporate documentation. At 75, he moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd spent 50 years in maritime logistics. His weathered face showed the same grim determination I felt. Emergency protocols activated, he confirmed. I've also contacted our 5 largest shipping partners. They're very interested in tonight's outcome. Excellent. Let them know Ashford Maritime's control structure is about to change significantly. Thaddeus Jr. appeared last, breathless from running up 6 flights of stairs. Unlike his portly father, the young man kept himself fit through competitive sailing. Mr. Ashford, my father won't tell me what's happening. He just keeps saying I shouldn't have come. Your father's involved in an attempt to steal this company. You're here to decide whether the Blackwell name retains any honor in maritime logistics. The young man's face went pale, but he nodded. Tell me what I can do. Bear witness. And remember that loyalty matters more than blood. The elevator chimed. Our conspirators had arrived. I positioned myself at the head of the boardroom table, the same seat I'd occupied for 45 years. Charleston Harbor glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows, container ships moving through darkness like illuminated ghosts of my career. Percy entered first, still wearing his dinner jacket but looking considerably less confident. Delphine followed, her designer dress and jewelry screaming of expenses they couldn't afford. Thaddeus Sr. huffed behind them, his British accent carrying nervous energy. The three investment bankers, Marcus Pemberton, Victoria Chen, and a silent partner named Gregory Walsh, filed in with briefcases full of premeditated theft. "Everyone, please sit." My voice carried the authority of someone who'd commanded shipping operations across 3 oceans. "Welcome to an emergency board meeting of Ashford Maritime Logistics. This session is being recorded and legally documented." Marcus Pemberton hesitated. "Mr. Ashford, I don't think we need to be so formal about preliminary discussions." "Sit down." Sophronia positioned herself at the opposite end of the table, laptop open, legal recorder running. Phineas took the seat to my right, the position of senior operations authority. Thaddeus Jr. stood against the wall, young face frozen in disbelief as he watched his father squirm. "Let's begin with the truth." I opened the folder Sophronia had prepared. 3 nights ago, my granddaughter Octavia overheard a planning session at Percy's residence. She heard discussions about transferring 51% control of Ashford Maritime away from me through fraudulent documentation. "That's not," Percy started. "I'm not finished." My voice cut like a ship's prow through fog. She heard her mother Delphine discuss placing me in assisted living at Magnolia Shores. She heard her father, my son Percy, express guilt that was immediately overruled by grief. And she heard Thaddeus Blackwell, my CFO of 20 years, described as a key ally in this conspiracy. Thaddeus Sr.'s face flushed purple. "Cornelius, you're misinterpreting." "Documentation?" I slid photographs across the table, printouts from Delphine's deleted emails that my IT security team had recovered, correspondence between Delphine Ashford and Coastal Capital Group discussing Ashford Maritime's valuation, dates going back 7 months. Victoria Chen paled visibly. Financial records. More documents slid across polished wood, showing wire transfers from Percy's business account to Thaddeus Blackwell's private offshore holdings. Total amount $470,000 over the past year. Percy's hands trembled. "Dad, those were legitimate consulting fees." "For what consulting?" "Thaddeus already draws a $200,000 salary as CFO. What additional services justified nearly $500,000 in undocumented payments?" Silence. "The truth is," I continued, "you've been paying him to betray me, to provide confidential company information to your investment banker friends, to coordinate this attempted coup." Thaddeus Jr. made a sound like he'd been punched. He stared at his father with devastated comprehension. "And tonight's dinner," I pressed on, "was designed to get me to sign documents transferring significant equity stakes while I was presumably too old and trusting to understand what I was signing. Correct?" Delphine found her voice, acid and venom mixing in her tone. "You're so arrogant, Cornelius, so convinced you're irreplaceable. Ashford Maritime needs modern leadership, not some dinosaur clinging to outdated shipping methods, outdated methods that generated $42 million in profit last year." Sophronia interjected. "More than Ashford Maritime has ever earned in a single fiscal period." "Lucky timing," Delphine shot back. "The maritime logistics industry is evolving faster than Cornelius can adapt. We've watched him turn down blockchain integration, artificial intelligence routing, autonomous shipping partnerships, because those technologies are experimental and expensive." Phineas interrupted. "Every single proposal Percy and Thaddeus brought forward would have cost millions in upfront investment with questionable return timelines." Percy finally found courage from somewhere. "That's exactly the problem. Dad's risk aversion is holding the company back. We could be industry leaders instead of industry dinosaurs." Risk aversion. I let the phrase hang in the air. "Tell me, Percy, what happened to Meridian Freight Services?" Percy's face went white. For those unfamiliar, I addressed the room. Meridian Freight Services was a mid-sized logistics company that invested heavily in experimental routing AI 3 years ago. They spent $18 million on technology that ultimately failed to integrate with existing shipping partnerships. The company declared bankruptcy 16 months ago. Victoria Chen shifted uncomfortably. That was an implementation failure, not a technology failure. The difference being academic when $18 million evaporates. I turned back to Percy and Coastal Digital Logistics. They invested heavily in blockchain tracking systems. What was their outcome? They're still operational, Percy muttered. Operating at a 37% loss, Phineas confirmed. Burning through venture capital while traditional competitors, like Ashford Maritime, continued generating steady profits. Marcus Pemberton finally spoke, his voice carrying less confidence than at dinner. Mr. Ashford, maritime logistics is changing. Companies that don't innovate will be left behind. Innovation without foundation is gambling, not business strategy. I stood, walking to the window, overlooking Charleston Harbor. I've spent 45 years building Ashford Maritime on principles that withstand market fluctuations and technological fads: steady growth, strategic partnerships, financial stability, boring principles. Delphine sneered. While you're building steady growth, competitors are building empires. Show me these empires. I turned back to face her. Show me a single maritime logistics company that's outperformed Ashford Maritime over the past decade, using the experimental technologies you're so eager to implement. Silence. You can't, because they don't exist. The maritime logistics industry rewards reliability, not innovation theater. I returned to my seat, which is why your attempted coup was never about improving Ashford Maritime. It was about liquidating a stable company for quick investment returns. That's not true, Percy protested weakly. Sophronia, please share the Coastal Capital Group prospectus we recovered. Sophronia pulled up documents on the wall-mounted screen. Investment projections appeared, showing Ashford Maritime's proposed restructuring, immediate sale of key assets, stock dilution, and a 5-year plan that would strip the company of everything valuable before inevitable bankruptcy. Coastal Capital Group specializes in private equity takeovers, Sophronia explained. They acquire stable companies, extract maximum value through asset sales and debt leverage, then abandon the corporate shell. The timeline projected Ashford Maritime's complete dissolution within 7 years. Subscribe and stay tuned so you don't miss any true revenge stories. Sometimes, even silence is the strongest form of revenge. Percy stared at the screen, genuine shock replacing his earlier defiance. Dad, I didn't know about that part. Marcus said we were positioning for long-term growth. You didn't ask, I interrupted. You were so eager to steal my company that you never bothered investigating who was actually benefiting from your betrayal. Thaddeus Sr. found his voice. British accent cracked. Cornelius, you must understand, the industry is changing. I genuinely believed modernization was necessary. You believed $470,000 was necessary. Everything else was rationalization. Thaddeus Jr. pushed away from the wall, his young face twisted with disgust. Dad, how could you? Boy, you don't understand the pressure. I understand you sold out the man who gave you everything. Thaddeus Jr. looked at me. Mr. Ashford, whatever you need from me, you have it. The Blackwell name will honor its debts, even if my father won't. Noted and appreciated. I turned back to the investment bankers. Gentlemen, lady, your services are no longer required. Exit this building immediately or I'll have you escorted out by security. You can't. Marcus started. I own this building, this company, and apparently more integrity than everyone else in this room combined. Get out. They fled with expensive briefcases and damaged reputations. After they left, silence pressed against the boardroom like deep water pressure. Percy stared at his hand. Delphine glared with unconcealed hatred. Thaddeus Sr. had shrunk into his chair, perhaps finally comprehending the magnitude of his betrayal. Here's what happens next, I began. Thaddeus Blackwell, you're terminated immediately. Your CFO position, your company stock, your pension all forfeited due to breach of fiduciary duty. Criminal charges will be filed with the South Carolina Attorney General regarding embezzlement and corporate fraud. Thaddeus's face went gray. Cornelius, please. 20 years of friendship. You threw it away for money you didn't need and wouldn't have kept. I looked at Thaddeus Jr. Your son will assume interim CFO duties while we conduct a formal search for your replacement. The young man nodded, still looking shell-shocked. Percy, my voice softened despite everything. You're my son, the child Winifred and I raised, the boy I taught to sail, sent to Wharton, gave every opportunity to succeed, and you repaid that love by trying to steal everything I built. Dad, I'm sorry. You're also terminated. VP of Operations, company stock. All financial support ends immediately. The QI Island estate that I co-signed for, I'm calling that loan. You have 60 days to refinance independently or face foreclosure. Percy's face crumpled. You can't do this to your own family. You did this to us when you chose Coastal Capital Group over your father. I turned to Delphine, who sat rigid with fury. And you, Delphine, you were never family. You were an opportunist who saw Percy as access to wealth you didn't earn. Get out of my building. This isn't over, Delphine hissed. We'll fight this. Sue you for wrongful termination. Try it. Sophronia's voice cut like legal steel. I've documented everything. The embezzlement, the conspiracy, the attempted fraud. Percy and Thaddeus signed employment contracts with termination for cause clauses. You have zero legal standing. Percy stood on shaking legs. Dad, please. Octavia, she needs. Octavia needs to learn that actions have consequences, that integrity matters more than shortcut, that her grandfather built something worth protecting from people who destroy it for quarterly profits. What about her private school? Percy's voice cracked. Her future is secure. I've established an educational trust in Octavia's name, administered independently. She'll have everything she needs for college and beyond. I paused. What she won't have is parents who taught her that theft is acceptable when called family planning. Delphine dragged Percy toward the exit, her designer heels clicking against marble floors like judgment itself. At the threshold, Percy turned back one final time. I really am sorry, Dad. I just wanted to prove I could be more than your shadow. Then you should have built your own light instead of trying to extinguish mine. They left. The boardroom felt larger somehow, emptied of toxicity and false loyalty. Phineas spoke first. Cornelius, are you all right? No. I sank into my chair, feeling every year of my 71 years pressing down. But I will be. Sophronia began packing her legal materials. We'll need to file formal reports with the SEC and South Carolina authorities. Document everything for potential criminal prosecution. Do whatever's necessary. Ashford Maritime's reputation matters more than family scandal. Thaddeus Jr. approached hesitantly. Mr. Ashford, I know I can't fix what my father did, but I want to try earning your trust. The real way, through work and loyalty. You already started by choosing integrity over blood loyalty. I extended my hand. Welcome to the Ashford Maritime Executive Team, Thaddeus. Let's hope you inherited your mother's character rather than your father's greed. We shook hands firmly, the young man's grip carrying determination and shame in equal measure. Ashford Maritime had survived its attempted coup stronger than before. Thaddeus Jr. had proven himself exceptional as interim CFO, discovering that his father had been skimming company resources for years. Total theft $1.2 million that we were now recovering through asset seizure and criminal prosecution. Percy and Delphine had lost their Kauai Island estate to foreclosure when no bank would refinance without my co-signature. They'd moved into a modest apartment in Mount Pleasant, both working multiple jobs to cover expenses they'd once expected me to handle. Octavia spent weekends with me now, court-ordered visitation that allowed me to maintain relationship with my granddaughter, while her parents figured out how to survive without stolen resources. Grandpa? Her voice came from my office doorway. She'd grown taller in 3 months, her 12-year-old frame carrying more confidence than before. Hello, sweetheart. How was school? Good. I got an A on my maritime history project. She held up a folder covered in ship sketches. I wrote about how Ashford Maritime was built on integrity instead of shortcuts. Winifred would be proud. I pulled her into a hug. What did your parents think? Octavia's face clouded. Mom got mad, said I was taking sides. But Dad, she paused. Dad actually cried. He said he was sorry for everything. Do you believe him? I don't know. He seems different now, sadder, but maybe more real. She looked up at me. Is it weird that I miss the old Dad but like this version better? Not weird at all. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find out who they really are. We stood together on the balcony, 3 generations of Ashford legacy, one who'd built it, one who'd tried to steal it, and one who'd saved it through courage and honesty. Gramp, when I'm older, can I work at Ashford Maritime? Like really work? Not just because I'm family? If you earn it through merit and integrity, absolutely. I squeezed her shoulder. But you'll start at the bottom like I did, learning cargo manifests, maintenance schedules, union negotiation. Good. I don't want to be like Dad. I want to be like you. We watched ships cut through harbor water, and I knew Winifred was smiling somewhere beyond reach. Ashford Maritime would continue. The legacy would survive. And most importantly, Octavia had learned the lesson Percy never did, that wealth built on betrayal crumbles quickly, but integrity lasts forever. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.